joining us today. My name is McKay Walker. I'm from Micro K-12. We're really lucky to have Stephen Reid with us today. The way that this will go is we'll go through a few esports topics that we're really focused on and excited about here at Micro K-12. And then we'll turn the time over to Stephen, who's going to walk us through some really cool global-wide uses of esports, and especially with Minecraft education. So going through, looking at esports when it comes to Micro K-12, we're really excited to see esports as not only a learning opportunity for some students that may learn in a different way, but also as a varsity sport. We've been seeing this through a lot of, especially in the state of Washington, where our headquarters is, where those students are learning in so many different ways. Game-based learning has really taken over. And the way that we like to support esports, in addition to providing some of these educational webinars and conferences like our Tech Fest event that's in October, is providing esports solutions. So this sometimes looks, I think most people know Micro K-12 as a computer and resource solution, but we obviously sell devices. So those computer desktops that you have in and maybe in your labs, we like to provide help with that. Any type of peripheral, headphone, mouse, keyboard. And we also sell solutions that get into the AV side of esports, which is really exciting for us to see, with students broadcasting some of their gameplay and then their video production, streaming it on Twitch and other solutions. So not only do we sell those devices, but also try to help with our partnerships with streaming those different solutions. One bundle that we have right now that we've gotten really competitive pricing on is with our Omen, our HP Omen line that features the AMD processor. We have a lot of solutions. We can tailor these with education pricing if it's something you want to put into, a lab with your yearbook team or your AutoCAD. We can get pretty creative and make some of these solutions. But of course, with esports, you want it to be shiny and fun. So we make sure that we add that as well. But reach out to your Micro K-12 sales rep if you have any questions or specific needs, and we can put you in contact with the right solutions. But with that being said, we're excited to introduce Stephen Reid, who is our game-based learning lead at Microsoft. He is a passionate advocate of both play as a powerful learning mechanism and also technology as a tool for learning. Globally, he presents in so many different areas in so many different countries, but he presents on concepts that are changing the way educators teach in the classroom and the way that students learn in the future. So right now we'd like to welcome Stephen, and we're excited to learn more.
Okay, so good. Thank you very much. As introduced, Stephen Reid, game-based learning lead for Microsoft, on the customer engagement team based out of what's called our Corp team. So I operate globally, and you'll learn more about how I do that later, and also a bit more about my history and how long I've been doing this and why I kind of present to you as the kind of the voice in this space for today. I want to call my presentation today Game On, and significantly, the title most people would put to this is Esports in Education. But actually, we're talking about something way bigger, and it needs to be more definitive than that. And I really want to impress this upon you in the time that we have, because esports, it's actually not that difficult to do esports in education. I mean, you can pretty much find so many guides out there to just putting together some esports teams and having them compete. Also, esports in education could also largely mean setting up one of the scholarship programs that you've heard. So it's like, hey, esports is a great scholarship tool where if you're very good at playing Dota, you can also come and study physics, which for those not in the United States always is a bit odd to us. It's like, hey, if you're really good at this sport, you can learn science with us for free. And it's always a very interesting concept. I don't disagree with it. It's always very interesting to us. And so that's esports in education. What we're very passionate about and what I really want to explore with you today is esports is as, and I'm missing a comma there, is as and for education. So where the esports becomes the mechanism for the education, and the kind of deeply rooted mechanism of that of the education. There's my camera. There we are. Thank you very much. And so I'll continue. I've been very blessed. I've actually been an educator for 20 years, and way back in my early career, I started using video games because I was a gamer, and I was heavily impacted by the digital games that I had played as a kid. I notably, as a young adult, recognized just how much I'd learned about history and science and maths from those games. And so as a very young educator, I thought, I'm going to take this and I'm going to try it myself. And we'll learn more about how I did that shortly. But that journey has taken me over 70 different countries around the world. There's not 70 dots on there because it just didn't make sense to do so for space. But that gives you an idea of the range of spaces that I've either physically visited, many if not most, and worked with students in, or I have active programs running in somewhere in the world right now. And those programs, as you're going to learn, are so diverse, and I'm sure there are parts of those programs that you would be like, oh, I'd love to do that, or we could do something similar. My big belief, as per my introduction, is that I genuinely believe that play, games, gaming, and game-based learning are one of the most transformative tools of our time, and we just haven't recognized it yet. We're just not sure about how to implement it. It takes time in education, perhaps way less than it does in corporate, and certainly the dynamics of entrepreneurial companies and spirits out there. And so with education, it's taken time. I've been talking about it for 20 years. Esports has been really starting to hit home and kind of knock on the doors and windows of education over the last certainly 6 to 7 years. And in the last 2, because of COVID, which we're going to learn a bit more about, we are now seeing the full impact of that and just what it can do for us. But I want to start with this slide here. And are we still seeing the slides? Can I get a verbal nod that we are sharing what we're supposed to be sharing? We good?
Yeah, we can see it. There's a little blocked out area, I think, from Zoom, though. But yeah, everything else looks good.
Oh, there is. Would that be my... What if I did that? Is that no longer blocked?
Perfect.
Excellent. That's the little Zoom camera. Okay, so I want to start with, we're going to go way back, because as educators, I think it's important that we always recognize not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. And so you might say, well, listen, why is it knocking on the door now? Why is it important that we're doing this? Why are you talking to us about changing our practice and using games in this way? And the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about and this has been a long time coming. This is decade after decade after decade, generation after generation after generation of the destruction of play, the gradual wearing away of play in our society. A recent study, 2019 study, showed that by play advocates in the UK and Europe, showed that 84% of parents do not know how to effectively play with their children. They know how to go through the motions, they know what they're supposed to be doing, but they don't know how to do it meaningfully and with the relevant tools. And it's because many of them haven't had to play, haven't been encouraged to play for years. And this sign is something that you'll see very predominantly around the UK, Middlesbrough in this case. No ball game signs. No ball game signs are everywhere in the UK. I grew up with them all over the place. And guess what? No ball game signs are in exactly the place you want to kick a ball. There's a big wall that you want to beat the ball against, or there's a big field that you want to run around on with the ball. And to protect the grass because someone owns it, or to protect the wall because it's someone's house or business, they say no ball game signs. They say no ball games, they stick the signs up. It gets so bad that now we have signs in the UK that say no games. Now, I'm still trying to figure out what that means, because, I mean, no ball game signs kind of makes sense, but if I sat beside that wall and played chess, I'm not entirely sure what the council would do. And so it's got to the point where it says no games. I don't actually have a picture of that because it's on another device, but I have a picture of a sign on the side of a building that says no games. And I would genuinely question that about our social spirit. And to take that a bit further, I want to ask you all listening, when was the last time you climbed a tree? And not because you had to rescue a cat or whatever, but because you wanted to. because you needed to, because you saw it there and you thought, oh, I could get up that. I could get right high up in that. And then off you go. And before you know it, the spirit of play has taken you over and your body is trying to figure out how to get up that tree. It's probably been decades since you did that. And that's because society tells us we shouldn't. In fact, so much so that if I went outside right now, in this little estate, in fact, I'm looking at one out the window. If I went outside right now and I started climbing a tree, someone would phone the police and they would say, there's a man climbing a tree in the neighborhood and you need to come immediately. And they would, they'd come and they'd pull me down out the tree and I would be subjected to questioning at least. And so I'm a bit obsessed with this. So I went online and I had a little look at it. And one of the things I did in a search engine was I said, man in tree. And this is what I got. Not climbing the tree, just bizarrely posing beside it with a big grin on his face. Because that's what I do when I go walking in the woods. I just sit around on trees and smile. And then I thought, we'll try again. And we got this one, which of course is scientifically, he's checking on the trees. He might even be a forestry ranger or something, but he's doing that. And then I thought, well, what about woman in tree then? Surely, you know, like, do women climb trees more than men? And we got this bonkers image because kissing trees is preferable to climbing them. And then this one, I've no idea what's going on with that one, but there's a whole series in your regular search engines. And then, so I tried again, man in tree, and I literally got man in tree. So it's bizarre, but here's the thing. When I search children in tree or child in tree, there is no end. And this is just 4 of a collection of thousands and thousands of images of children climbing, jumping, swinging, hanging, playing in trees. Because socially, we don't do it. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that suddenly we all should. Okay, climbing trees might not be the best example. But what about just skateboarding or BMXing or just playing tic-tac-toe or you know, with chalk on the pavement and so on? And what I would challenge you to do is think about where and when you've seen instances and scenarios of what that might look like in your society. So for example, when we tend to see examples of where adults are now given permission to play, it tends to be a festival. And it's probably a ticketed event and it's arranged and it's organized and it's monitored and the tools are available for you to do it. Shy of maybe going out and kicking a ball in a city park, and even then there's probably a no ball game sign. But largely these things are things like festivals or, you know, days out, or parks. Parks are places where we say to society, you can play here. And I'll talk more about that, what's not being said there in a moment. So much so that if we move around our cities, you'll discover that actually we go to great lengths to stop people playing. For those of you who don't recognize what we're looking at here, these are anti-skateboarding measures that cities all over the world put up, and they stop skateboarders from grinding on the seats that we sit on. Now think about this for a moment, because you might be going, of course, I don't want skateboarders grinding along the seats that I'm going to sit on, but you're going to sit on them. Like, you're literally, it's okay for you to sit on them. Some people stand on them. You might even spill your coffee on them one afternoon and just go, oops, and you're going to walk away. Because someone will come along, city services or whatever, will come along and clean it up. But heaven forbid somebody goes on a skateboard and has a bit of fun with that block of concrete that we've put down for somebody to sit on. And actually, we go to such great lengths to do that we will decorate them and we'll make them in different ways. The Canadians turn them into maple leaves. They actually spend huge amounts of taxpayers' money making their anti-play measures look good, which is just bonkers to me. And so, back to my history as a teacher, with that in mind, I was always playful, and I had always been a playful child, and I played physically and I played digitally. And so when I got to my first job, I was tasked with teaching a very difficult group of students the history and the geography of World War II. And I had just over a term to do it. And so my immediate response as a young teacher and a gamer was, we could use Command and Conquer Red Alert. And so we did. I brought in, now for those of you who aren't aware, Command & Conquer Red Alert is a top-down isometric 1996 war game where you got to play one faction versus another. You could build tanks, you could build radar centers, you could build medics and go off to war. Not at all, you know, indecently violent or anything like that, just as you see it right there. And what I did was I gave the kids a blank map on the wall. I decorated it in the shape of Europe. I did an outline of Europe. And then as we moved through the history of World War II, the annexation of Austria, the invasion of Poland, the introduction into the War of Britain, the passing of the Maginot Line, the taking of Paris, as we did all of that, we played the scenarios out. And some of my students were on one faction, some of my students were on the other. And we dictated on our map our own World War II. And then we compared. So if the game was lost to the Allies, they lost Bucharest or Riga or Paris or whatever. If the war was won by the Allies, then they liberated or took out the enemy in that space. And then on the map on the wall, they had to draw their alternative. And then with these acetate pens. And what we did was we then compared it to the original. When we got to the end of the term, they smashed their exams. And I mean like off the charts. And the head teacher said to me, how did you do that? And I said to him, well, the only thing I did differently was I used my PlayStation 1 and I played Command & Conquer Red Alert. And there was a big kind of like investigation into it. I actually had to bring my kids into my class at one point and just do like a point to, you know, draw the Danube on the map, show me where Trieste is and show me where Bratislava is. And my kids were just ... They just got it. And the head teacher was amazed. And he said to me, do that again. So I did it again and again. And then I decided that, you know, we got bored of Command & Conquer. So we used Tomb Raider. And this time we followed Lara Croft around the world. And as we did, we had a map on the wall. And everywhere Lara went, we learned about the clothing, culture, currency, language, food. We learned about the Mesopotamians and the ancient Vietnamese and the Japanese and the Chinese and the Egyptians and the Turkish and so on and so on and so on. And we learned all about these amazing cultures and their history by being Lara and visiting their ruins as a Tomb Raider. And it was equally as successful. We got to the end of term and the students smashed their exams because they not only had they read about it and learned about it, and of course we weren't just playing the game, we were also researching and looking in books and, you know, writing things down and so on, collating data. But not only had they done all of that, but they had also been the Tomb Raider, or they had been the commander or the soldier or the, you know, the tank commander and so on. And so this just built upon. And then many years later, so actually I've used 147 games in education, and significantly those games are off-the-shelf games. So there are games that are designed for education. And one thing I will say about that is they work, but kids aren't stupid. They know when you're using a game to teach them maths because it was designed to teach maths, or history because it was designed to teach history. Where we get clever as adults is where we take the worlds that students are already immersed in and we use them to bring out the mathematics. And so some years later, 12, 13 years ago, Minecraft came along, and I realized that was the game changer for me, because no longer was I limited to the narratives of other game designers, or I was limited to the worlds that had been built for me, or I was limited to making slight modifications to other people's code. All of a sudden, I could decide, this is a world I made. This is a Pompei toy box. The box opens up. Pompei rises as if a model in your classroom, and then the students can go in. Now, I'm going to get an opportunity, hopefully, towards the end of this call to show you this world and maybe one other. But within that world, I could decide where we do maths, how we do maths, what we're going to do for literacy. I mean, the history is obvious, but what about the geography? Well, we have a volcano. Let's look at the engineering that it took for aqueducts for the Romans to move water across the countryside, many of which are still standing today. Let's look at the gladiatorial arenas and have a mini esport and talk about gladiator life, and so on and so on and so on. And before you know it, we have dozens and dozens of lessons in one world that we have the power to create, and even better, our students. So if you're thinking, well, you know, surely though, games, I mean, we know they're big and we know they're current, but they're not that big and that current. They really are. The gamers worldwide are 3.2 billion. That's almost half of our entire population on Earth, and it's growing massively and fast. The industry itself is worth 197 billion a year. Now, 197 billion is, we can't even imagine what that money would look like if it was piled up high. I get it. It's a conceptual amount of money. But if I tell you that somebody said to me recently, yeah, but the music industry is huge. I mean, Dr. Dre has just sold his entire music collection for 200 million. And then I said, that's right. And how much is 200 million of 197 billion? And they were like, wow. You know, this decades established artist, world selling #1 artist, isn't his entire record collection isn't even a percentage, a minuscule percentage of 197 billion. And actually the industry surpasses the movie, television and music industries combined. And so there's some really crazy numbers out there. You can see the content spend, 35.8 billion is just in content. We spend 6 billion a year worldwide on hardware, including in schools, incidentally. 60% of an American population game every single day. And that's not to say it's on an Xbox, it could be on a mobile phone, but they game every single day. 55% male, 45% female. The average gamer is actually 34 years old, and 13% of new gamers are 65 plus. Because they're realizing that it's, and well, first of all, they come from a gaming generation, but also they are recognizing that it's the best way to connect with their sons, daughters, and grandchildren as well. If we move over, you can see the sheer size of what's yet to come. Markets are shrinking all over the world. Gaming is not. It's struggling. Like everything else, it's seen a downturn, but these are still, between 2022 and 2025, this year's estimates are still 30% growth in Europe, 13% growth in the US, while others are retracting. You'll also see there that many places, many homes have eight games per device, and they have three quarters of households have a gaming device, and they game for 4.2 hours per day. So quite often people will say to me, yeah, but you know, gamers don't game for hours, only like proper gamers do. Average gamers, 4.2 hours per day. It's huge. And actually, the thing on the right-hand side is the thing that I really want to draw your attention to, which is the parental engagement. For a long time, teachers would say to me when I said we should use game-based learning, oh no, the parents won't like it. Parents won't buy that at all. And I would run parents' evenings, and inevitably the parents would say, I love it. Can we try it? And that number, even as up as 2021, was only 20%. By 2022, and we expect it to be even higher now, 55% of parents in a variety of polls from the United States to Asia said, absolutely. It was more difficult in Asia, actually. Asia's lower, but certainly in Western democratic Northern Hemisphere countries, largely it's at 55% of parents saying, absolutely, I game with my kids, I engage in the gaming world that my children are in, and I would love to see it in schools. It should be part of what they do to learn. Now, I'm going to race through this to get to the esports and then the demo part. But what I really want to do is impress upon you how this goes way beyond the game. Because I know another concern when people start looking at this for the first time is, yeah, but is that it? Like, is it just gaming and we're done? So in the United States, I run a series of programs where I throw kids into large piles of Lego. And then I get the parents involved and we let them play. Back to my point about no ball game signs, I just say, hey, get on the floor, big pile of Lego, go play. What do you want me to make? Anything. And they do. They make anything. And they love it. I mean, I'm sure those of you who are parents and certainly the teachers on the audience will know that, you know, we have seen kids in that zone. However, what I then do is I take them off of the Lego, I bring them to devices, and I give them something very challenging for their age. Now, you'll note the age of the kids there. I give them, in this particular instance, hydroelectric power. Let's learn about hydroelectric power. Let's learn about high topography and low topography. Let's learn about water pressure. Let's learn about the concept of reservoirs and filling those reservoirs to create water pressure. Let's talk about dams. Let's talk about how water weighs and creates pressure. And so the dam has to be X meters thick, made of X concrete, and so on. And let's look at how that then generates power by pushing water pressure through a small source, which then allows us to turn a turbine, yada, yada, yada. Then I take them back to the Lego. And I actually get a lot of kickback from parents at this point saying, well, wait a minute, you know, my kid's not ready for hydropower. They're barely reading or they're barely writing. And that little girl that you see there with the black on, with a little ponytail, she and a group of 3 or 4 other girls immediately came back to the Lego and made this. And if you listen to them, which I did, I actually have a recording as part of the client group that we were working with, you can hear them talking about topography. We need a high topography, so we need rocks. And then one of them goes off and finds all the grey. And we need high water pressure and low water pressure. So we're going to need a big load of blue on the top and we're going to need blue on the bottom. And then we need a dam and we'll make that out of white brick. And it needs to be 3 blocks thick because 1 block is a meter, for example, or 4 blocks thick because 1 row is a meter, and so on. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that in 6 months' time they will have, maintained a lot of that information. That's a whole different teaching process. But the point I'm trying to show is that if you give them the right environment, they will pick up on what you're saying. They will take those concepts and they will make them concrete for themselves, and then they will present them back to you, which of course as teachers you're familiar with, but with games, with toys like Lego, infinitely more so. And then the next day when they come back to me on the Sunday, because it's a weekend event, I then say, right, we're going to take everything you did yesterday and we're going to make it in Minecraft. And then they do. They get into Minecraft on their devices, whatever those devices happen to be, and they start making in this empty toy box. I give them a big empty toy box and they make the grass and the rocks and the hills, and they plant trees and they make the dam and they fill it up with water and they add a big building that has the hydro system in it, the electricity generators in it, and so on and so on and so on. And then I teach them how to make it work. So we use redstone to actually make it work. So this model that you're looking at literally works. When it rains, the reservoir fills up. When the reservoir reaches a certain height, it opens up generators by turning turbines. Those turbines then switch lights on in the world. And the kids are all fascinated that the lights came on because we had water, which is the concept, right, of hydropower. In the UK, we have a wonderful building called Penicuik House. And Penicuik House is an old Victorian building. It was actually built in the 1600s, burned down in 1899, right before the turn of the century. And it's now just a ruin that people walk their dogs around it. And so I took kids to it and I got them to measure it and count the windows and use meter sticks and take photographs of it and paint it. And we flew a drone above it and we took video and photographs and we collected all this rich data. Then we took them back to school, put them on Minecraft, used a scale mechanism. 1 cube equals 1 meter, 1 block equals 1 meter cubed. And then we built the house 1-to-1 scale. And then from old photographs and plans, we added the windows, we added the chimneys, we fixed the roof, we put in the doors, we put in the floors, we put in the fireplaces. And then on the Friday of that week, we then all dressed up as, we all dressed up as Victorians. We set fire to the building, just like the night of 1899. We sipped tea while we watched it. And then what was left after the fire, we sent to a 3D printer right there in the classroom with the kids. And then every child went home with a 3D printed version of the actual ruin that's left today that you can walk your dogs around. And we covered it in grass. And we painted it with acrylic paint, and we had an art teacher come and tell us how to do that effectively. And then every single child took that home. And then in doing so, we were then able to do a photography competition where we came back to the building, and then the students had to do a photography competition taking their building against the actual ruin to see who could come up with the best conceptual photograph. Full cycle learning. Here's where the learning comes in, the real sort of assessment comes in. 3 months later, we did a test on Penicuik House. It was just a written test. 100% smashed. the exam. They could tell us when it was built, when it burned down, what it was made of, who built it, who owned it, how they made their money, what it was used for during the First World War, how it was changed over in the Second World War for something else. They could tell us everything about this building, everything. Every fact, every date, every number, every name. And because, again, they had been there, they'd experienced it, they'd been the Victorians, they'd built it, they'd set fire to it, they'd 3D printed it, then they'd gone back and they'd solidified that learning with a nice competition. And then finally, in South Africa, we have we have townships, many townships. I'm going to talk more about South Africa later when we get to the esports part. But for this particular piece, we have a gentleman who lives in a township called Kagiso. Kagiso has no schools. It's a sprawling mass of these homes where people live, and very dangerous, especially for the children. But no schools was the main thing for me. And so while I was working with this gentleman down there who makes pots and plant pots and window decorations and things for people, and he gets the kids to help him, I thought, I know what I'll do next time I visit. I will take a 3D printer. And so I did. I took an XYZ $250 3D printer. It's not that great, to be honest, as a in terms of its final products. This is one of the little boys that lives there called Joseph Mary, having a look in. And I said to Joseph Mary, that box can make anything you want. Now, we take it for granted, right? We've got 3D printers lying around schools. Some of them aren't even unboxed. Many of them are used by one teacher and one teacher only, usually in the tech department. This little boy was amazed. He was like, anything. I said, anything you want. Anything at all, anything you want. Will it make toys? I said, it can make toys. Can it make a phone holder? I said, it can make a phone holder. Can it make shoes? I said, I think it can make shoes. He had hundreds of ideas. But my idea was, what if we built a school? Now, Western democratic mindset school, you can't build a school with a 3D printer. You'd have to print thousands of bricks. But what we did was we got Joseph Mary and the other students to design toys in Minecraft. The larger they built them, the more scale we could get in detail. Then we created those designs in a set world. We then 3D printed those toys from Minecraft. Then we painted them just like the model that we showed you in the UK, and we sold them. And with the money, I mean, there's a spinning top made in Minecraft, and it works. And with the money, we bought bricks. And with the bricks, and bricks are super cheap. They cost very, very little out there. And with the bricks, we built a classroom, and then another, and then another. And now we have a classroom in Kagiso that hosts 31 children currently. And somebody donated books, and someone gave us glass, and someone gave us a roof. And before you know it, we have a school on this guy's land. And parents send local parents to that little area. And we could do that again. We could do that project 100 times, and it would work. All using games as the base concept of actually transforming our practice, of genuinely transforming the world, not just whether or not we can achieve exam success. And so I said earlier about working in over 70 countries. 13 of those currently are esports active. There's where I'm running esports programs currently. United States, Canada, much of the Nordics, Europe, certainly South Africa, which we're going to talk about, of course, in parts of Asia. Nothing in South America yet. We'll figure that out. And so I just want to talk about what esports is very briefly, and I won't talk across the slide in detail, but it's really just esports is the idea that people will come together and they will play games together in an organized fashion, and they form teams, and those teams form leagues, and then people watch. Now, a lot of people then go, esports, how ridiculous. But I would say the same about soccer. I'm not a soccer fan. You may be shocked. I live in Qatar, and I actually left when the World Cup came. I'm not a soccer fan, but millions of people around the world spend a huge amount of money watching soccer, or American football, or cricket, or rugby, or basketball, or tennis. It's the same concept. They practice, they join teams, they arrange leagues, then they ticket those leagues, and they get an audience. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, I know, but actually they don't get the audiences that like the NFL get, surely. Yes, they do. This was the League of Legends 2019 final in Paris, France. 106 million unique viewers, both there and outside of the stadium, on digital. $2.2 million prize pool for the team that won. 24 teams, 120 players in total, and they are drawing full arenas. The International 2019 with a $34.3 million prize pool in China, doing exactly the same. 18 teams, 90 players. It's as big as important as. In fact, esports has more viewership than any other sport in the world except the NFL or soccer when they conduct the World Cup. And the NFL numbers are actually not too much higher. And so there's so much to it, and I'm going to talk about curriculum later, but I do want to touch on one of the big benefits of it is social and emotional learning, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and not just in the bubble that they exist in, their sort of immediate classroom friends, but then the entire classroom, going out into schools and school-wide practices and policies, and then homes and communities. If we get this right in school, this transfers. It bleeds into the child's wider life. And we've got all sorts of, there's all sorts of case studies out there showing just how this works. But I want to give you a very specific example of this. A South African, I want to take the top green quote on the right, because we're running a big program in South Africa that's going to be our case study for this call. But I want to just highlight to you in that call that one parent wrote to me after we had started running our esports program down there and said, and the email said, your esports program has literally single-handedly saved our son from a deep depression. Actually, it goes on to talk about the fear of suicide from the parents. It was COVID, the child was locked down, had stopped eating, stopped washing, even stopped playing, just lay in bed all day, cried, punched a hole in the wall. Very, 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 very difficult situation for the parents. They thought he was going to commit suicide. And we reached out to the community, the whole community, through one of our customers. We arranged this program. The parents said, hey, do you want to, you're playing it from home, do you want to jump on and see if you can give it a go? Their son did. 3 months later, he's bouncing out of bed in the morning, he's getting his homework done, he's tuning into every class. At this point, because we're still in COVID, he's tuning into every class on Teams. He's drinking X amount of water, because that's one of the prerequisites. You have to keep a water diary, you have to keep a sleep diary, you have to eat a certain amount of nutritious meals a day, you have to eat 5 different colors of food per day, not including food coloring and sugars. She said it was, the mum said it was just the ultimate turnaround for their student. And that student is now still playing in the South African leagues that we work with. And of course, there's lots of intrinsic benefits. I mean, happiness just ultimately is one of them. There's lots of transferable skills, social impact we've talked about, resilience, sportsmanship, digital well-being, health and mental well-being. A lot of this stuff is actually on what I would call the teaching the tough stuff list. This is the stuff teachers go, right, how do I talk about positive screen time? How do I build resilience? How do I create health and mental well-being processes in my classroom that are effective for my kids? Well, this does it. This does it. How do I make sure that my kids, in everything they're learning, they have transferable skills that will take them into their careers? And we're going to talk more about that in a moment. And on the right-hand side there, you'll see skills like leadership, communication, dexterity, responsibility, problem solving, cyber skills. I mean, we are finding it so difficult to teach that worldwide. And here's a program, here's a system that actually encourages it from the second they switch the device on. There's also digital citizenship within that, and you know, cultivating their digital identity. I work with people now in their mid to late 20s who many years ago I worked with as kids. They came on board, they were helping me out with networking. I worked with a 14-year-old that networked an event for me for 40,000 people in one of the biggest arenas in the UK called the NEC. The Birmingham NEC. National Exhibition Centre. It's huge. It's inconceivably huge. I'm sure America has larger ones. And the only person I could find that knew what they were doing, and I mean, seriously, I spoke to lots of adults that were like, no, what you're trying to achieve is too big. And he networked for 40,000 people, and he was 14 years old. He's now in his mid-20s, working in a big global networking company, and he still goes by his online name, Zekron. He still goes by it. He's a grown man. He won't mind me quoting his name. I've done it before with him on presentations. He still goes by that. People just call him it all over the place. His teammates call him it because he grew up with it. It's his digital identity, and it's who he has become. And these things are really important. So, and that's going to become more prolific. So how do we help our students to recognize how they need to live and learn and work in this digital community safely? It's not about them coming into our world so we can teach them how to do it. It's about us getting into theirs. And there's some more examples. We need to help them to be positive and safe and legal and ethical. And actually, esports is fantastic for that, because we encourage, and the picture shows quite clearly there's a female in there. We encourage gender respect, gender equality, equity, and respect across all of our esports spaces, which actually I think the sporting world is struggling with. I think we can all admit there's a struggle in that respect. Even down to in the UK, I mean, it's only recently that professional female rugby players have even been paid at all for their sport, while male rugby players have been paid for decades, soccer too. And so career readiness is the other thing. I mean, when we talk really, people say, all right, so they're going to get games, they're going to get a job in gaming. Of course, that's probably front and easy to talk about. But for every game that goes out, certainly every what we call AAA game, which is these sort of huge games that students buy into, we have legal and financial and human resources and administration and business and health management and broadcasting and digital. And then, of course, game support and development. And we need performance management, performance psychologists, wellness and mental health coaches, head of scouting, data and API collectors, instructors, budgeting managers, business developers, head of advertising, social media optimizers, web developers, sound engineers. These people are all over the world, and all of them, every single role that you see there on that screen is relevant, if not prolific, in the gaming industry. And there are thousands of roles. In fact, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of roles out there, certainly hundreds and hundreds of careers that the students can aim for. Artists, licensing agreement people, insurers, hardware suppliers. That is crazy. Another way to look at that, and we talked earlier about the transferable skills and the teamwork and the leadership and the communication and the dexterity, is how do we then look at the roles and the academic links in there? So if we say, okay, we need professional players, we need analysts, we need journalists, we need broadcasters, we need video editors, well, where's the academic links to that? So we need computer scientists, we need ICT, we need science teachers and technology teachers and engineering teachers and math teachers, just to help our students to get those things. And then those roles are just in esports alone. If you look on the right-hand side, we've then got, well, what about careers? Cybersecurity, big data, network engineering, artificial intelligence, which is huge right now and will continue to be, virtual reality and software engineering. And as teachers, we must be able to look at that list and go, right, well, I can see where maths exists and science exists and literacy exists, and I can see where my creative media class would really benefit, and so on. And then there's general roles there at the bottom. So just another way of looking at it. And another really nice way that I like looking at it is this one, games industry careers, because it literally says, if you, in art, create 2D and 3D concepts for models and characters and creatures and environments. There's UI artists, VFX artists, concept artists, and that's just art teachers. Animation, of course, as well. Then we're going to go into audio. Possible specialisms include sound design, music designers, audio directors, and from that also comes things like system designers and AI designers and technical designers, and that's just music and design. Then we've got production and programming and quality assurance and brand and marketing, and there's actually, I've only got one slide example, but this particular series is fantastic for breaking it down. Where are we going to need literacy? Where are we going to need science? Where are we going to need civics? And so on. And then a lot of people say, well, give me an example. give me an example of where our kids could go and what they could do. And I say, great. Well, there's esports orgs like Excel or Team Dignitas or Team Liquid or the Golden Guardians. And you know, but there's also tournament and event organizers like Valve or Riot Games or Epic, for example, Overwatch. There's also apparel. So they could be working for Nike or Adidas. And who have huge spaces in esports and games and game-based learning. But they could also be working for a client I met just yesterday, Dell. They could be working for Dell or Asus or Lenovo or Microsoft. We're on that list. There's also massive streaming platforms like Twitch. There's journalism. I subscribe to 3 or 4 different journal, and I mean paid subscriptions to journals, newspapers, magazines, that kind of stuff that are in the games industry specifically. Like Rock, Paper, Shotgun or Edge magazine, for example. They could work for the BBC and so on. And then, of course, there's the sponsors. I'm working with people literally right now with sponsors like MasterCard and Red Bull and Honda, for example, who are sponsoring programs that I'm doing with game-based learning. And then there's the publishers themselves at the bottom that the kids are more than aware of. So the career opportunities are just vast if we just take the time to tap into them. And I want to give you an example of where this has been hugely successful. We have a customer in South Africa called Kuro. Kuro are doing incredible things. And this is one of their ways of looking at it. Quite often they'll say, video games are just the tip of the iceberg. The part you can't see is all the stuff that comes thereafter. The stuff on the bottom that forms the real body of the iceberg. And so they decided that they were going to start getting into this in 2017. And they did. And it was very ad hoc. It wasn't very organized, and they'll admit that. By 2018, they had schools across their group signed up. By 2019, they had leagues, like proper leagues, and Kuro's Mount Richmore School finished in 3rd place in the Paladins School League. And then in 2020, they started using Minecraft Esports, some of the worlds that I've made that I'm going to show you very shortly. They had 100 learners, 12 schools, and 48 media pieces went out. By 2021, they had formal Kuro sport as esport. They had established multiple esports leagues. They had included a Kuro Cup. They now had 5 times the amount of learners. They had 35 schools, secondary schools, 22 primary schools, and then they had 500 live views on streams, 50 media pieces. And by 2022, and we're actually just getting into 2023 stuff with them, I was in South Africa last week, they've now got 1,800 learners, 59 teachers. They've got 3 full-time members of staff that only do esports, 55 schools taking part, and they've got 98 hours streamed. And they're also the champions of the international Minecraft leagues that we ran last year. They are growing from strength to strength, and their students are flocking to them. What they're also finding is that as a school that requires they require students to enroll as it's a sales mechanism. They are now finding that their enrollment is at an all-time high. And this is kind of roughly how they did it. So you might think, well, did they stop at Minecraft? They didn't. They went on to Dota, CSGO. They then did Minecraft PvP. They did Valorant. By 2022, they introduced Rocket League and Apex Legends. This year, they added Overwatch. They have a multiverses across a whole range of players across the country, and they are now doing a professional league, like a global professional league, challenging other schools around the world. And so that brings me to the last part, which is to really just get in for the last part. I'm conscious of Q&A as well, and show you just one example of what that might look like and where you can find these worlds. So we have what's called the make and model worlds, and this is just one screenshot from them from Busy Bees. We have Pirate Cove. We have one set inside a computer called Binary Builders. We have a Wild West themed one. And what a make and model world is really what's called a build battle for children. And as teachers, we can build the curriculum into this. So the students get a timer, they get a scoreboard, and they get a platform on which to build. And actually, there's a video, I think, if this works. Hang on, let me just see if my sound is working before I do this. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see if sound's working. You'll get the idea anyway. I'm not hearing anything. Anyway, you get the idea. This is the sort of scale of which the students, I'll just talk you through it. The students are moving around the world, and then we'll just skip on a bit as Busy Bees comes out. There we are. So you'll see there that we're in this giant garden. There's a timer. The children get a hive each because they pretend to be bees. And then they explore the garden. There's lots of things that they can do around the garden for fun, ultimately, including frogs, which were a nightmare to make. And then ultimately what they do is they get buildings. So it starts here. Yeah, so they choose their team, green versus yellow. When the timer is started, you see the timer going down. The student there is building a flower. This one's building a watering can. As the time begins to tick down, the teacher can then vote. They can 3D print what they build immediately from those. So you can just export for 3D printing. And then the winners of the build, I just want to show what that looks like there. Oh no, that's the end. Yeah, I'll just go back to here. The winners get some sort of prize, usually a 3D print. And the teachers, there's a rubric that comes with this now where teachers can build this in. And I'm just going to go to the next slide. Whoops. Let's just crack on with that. Oh, that was the end. Okay, we'll go back to there. The way teachers can build this in is they can say, well, listen, I mean, we had flowers and plant pots there, but actually, what if we built a cross section of a human heart? What if we built a scene from a book that a set text that you've been reading? What if we built a volcano and asked the students to make it work within 30 minutes? So not only are they getting to do this in Minecraft, but they're having to do what you've been studying for what if they had to build a scene, one scene that shows the journey from Lewis and Clark as they moved across America and the exploration of America? What if they had to build a weather system and show how a weather front happens in that little platform that they've got, and they've got 25 minutes to do that. And then you gauge using the rubric, you gauge, or your own assessment rubrics, you gauge in points. You give them points, they get fireworks as a kind of a congratulations, and then you reset the world and you start again. And so with the time that's left, and I'm going to open it up for Q&A while I'm doing this, I'm going to stop sharing, open it up for Q&A, and then I'm going to jump into Minecraft while I'm doing that, just so that I can actually go into this world and show you what that looks like. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments, any challenges?
Yeah, so this will be posted afterwards.
Great.
So make sure, yeah, any slide decks, we can get those to the attendees. That was the #1 asked question. And then, yeah, if you want to jump into some Minecraft, as you're doing that, there was a question specifically on Minecraft for education at this question says at our middle school. One of the problems we have is that we aren't enough, or there isn't enough permissions to keep students from playing anytime they are on their Chromebook. Would it ever be possible that Minecraft for education would be able to have a mode where students cannot create their own worlds or join any worlds except for the teacher's world?
It's funny because my answer is I would hope so. And there is a methodology that you can go in and you can put that in, and it gets upvoted. And if enough people upvote it, it's definitely on the road, it's considered for the roadmap. And I hear you, I do. What I always laugh at though is that nobody says that about Word, Teams, or OneNote. It's just like, could we have something that stops our kids going into OneNote when we don't want them to? It's like so funny, because it kind of just proves my point when they say, how do we engage our kids with this technology? Not to mute your point though, however, I hear you. And currently, no, there isn't a methodology of saying you can't do that unless there's some way in the back, your IT systems that then just take it off and then put it back on when you need it. But no, currently that's not available, unfortunately. I do hear you though. I just find it fascinating. It's just like kids are not jumping on Teams when you don't want them to. Any other?
If you wanted to show that example while we have more questions come in, that'd be great.
So I want to just, not at all. I'll share my screen. I'm going to share Minecraft. Share. There we go. I will get rid of. That's it. I think that's it because my camera's not on. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to go into View Library, play with the subject kits. We're going to go into History and Culture, and then we are going to show, where's Pompei? So we've got World War I, we've got Ancient Egypt, Create Your Own Museum. There's the City of Florence.
It looks like your screen may have froze. If you want to reshare, it looks like it's just on the main screen.
Right, let me just try that then. I wonder if that's, I'll stop sharing and I will reshare. Let's try that one more time. Otherwise, I'll share the whole screen rather than just Minecraft. Share. Okay, view library. Are you seeing that now? Subject.
Yeah, we can
X.
see the library.
Excellent. All right.
It does.
And then,
yeah. We'll see when you click on it. It looks like it might be just a snap.
A snap behind. Then we're going to go down and we're going to look for Pompei. We're going to click create world, and that's how quick it is for you to jump into any of these learning worlds. And we are going to jump into Pompei. And
it looks like it's frozen. It looks like
it has. All right, let me try and
Yeah.
share the actual screen. That must be a Zoom thing then, because I've been this is my 4th presentation today, so I wonder if that's a Zoom issue. Let me stop sharing, and then I'll just share my whole screen. And we'll see if then moving to Minecraft, is that better?
Yep, we can see it now. Perfect.
Excellent. All right, noted. Noted. All right. So you'll see here that as a player, I'm in this world and I can look around and I can see buildings and people and things. But if I fly up, and I'm very much a fan of helping children to understand these concepts through changes in scale, it turns out that, you know, we could look down on the city of Pompei, which you saw, and it turns out it's contained in this box. And that's actually a digital pedagogy, is in containing the lessons so the kids can't go off and do whatever they want. It's all very contained. And then in here are a bunch of lessons, like a maths lesson on farming, or a geography lesson about merchants around and who the Romans traded with around the world. And there's a geography lesson to do with the volcano. And if we move around the back of the volcano here, you'll see that it's actually sectioned off so the kids can see how lava forms and slowly gets squeezed out and up into the surface. And we have science worlds and literacy worlds and history, lessons within this space. There's baths, there's engineering, there's fish markets for ecology, looking at Roman ecology, all within the context of Rome, of course, and Pompei in this case, but actually doing huge swathes of the curriculum. And then the last one that I want to show you on this particular one is, if I press the C key, we literally jump into code, and we can either block code, which I'm showing you here, we can JavaScript, or we can Python, and the kids can do anything they want from scratch. And if I now type eruption, you'll see that ash starts to fall from the sky. And the kids are like, how did that happen? Well, that's just a small piece of JavaScript using JavaScript or Python using Minecraft that then creates the effect that the volcano is erupting. And if we head over to the volcano, you'll see that it's no longer dormant, but the lava is streaming down the face of the volcano. And so now the kids have got a different, they're not only are they somewhere else entirely in the world, not only are they somewhere else entirely in time, but now they're actually witnessing one of the great moments of our human time on Earth, was the fall of Pompeii to Mount Vesuvius. And so we can even use code to teach computing studies, but also animate these points outwards to our children and make those concepts, those historical and wide concepts, more concrete. And then finally, this is the last one I want to jump into, and I'll jump into Busy Bees just so you can see what it looks like. These are the esports worlds. So there's a whole series of them. You'll see that we actually are in this giant garden with all the flowers that you saw. There's our timer, there's our scoreboard, there's our yellow platform, and there's our green team platform. And as a teacher, all you do is you say, I want 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we're going to press start. And that is it. You can see now that the timer is ticking, the students are building, and then when you're ready to score, you get yourself an armor. And this is esport. This is kids love this. This is creative, competitive esports. And when you're ready, you can, and I'm just going to go into teacher mode, place, great use of scale. Loved that you added your annotations. Your depiction of Lewis and Clark was fantastic. You did this, you did this, you did this. And you'll see now that the yellow team has 6 points and the green have 0. And so very quickly, you can turn an esport into an assessment, or an assessment into an esport. And at the click of a button, those worlds are ready for you. And with that, we are done.